Caring Review, print speaking to the blind, celebrating 40 years of audio newspaper production. Welcome to this week's edition of the Glasgow Times podcast, recorded at the Bishopbriggs Media Centre by our amazing volunteers. You can get in touch with us via Facebook, Twitter or Instagram using @QNReview. That is @CUEANDREVIEW. You can also contact us directly by emailing information@QNreview.com. That is INFORMATION@CUEANDREVIEW.com, or by calling 0141 772 3976. That's 0141 772 3976.
From the Glasgow Times, Friday the 18th of October, from the news section. People in our most deprived areas deserve much better. Exclusive, sudden community centre closure leaves vulnerable youngsters hungry during school holidays. Report by Amanda Keenan. The sudden closure of a lifeline community hub after its boiler broke down has left scores of Glasgow families without a hot meal during school holidays. Some of Postle Park's most vulnerable youngsters, who attend Postle Point Community Centre in Denmark Street, have been left to go hungry after workmen arrived on Tuesday at 5 p.m. and declared the hub off limits. Glasgow Life, which manages the building, made the decision after condemning its boiler as unsafe, but users say the move came without warning and has left them in complete disarray. Young People's Futures is one of the charities which uses the hub daily to serve hot meals to more than 100 local youngsters. Its chair Brian Land says the decision to shut the doors so suddenly has left its holiday hunger programme in a state of flux, as well as meaning line dancing classes and community events for the elderly have had to be halted. The 47-year-old added, the centre should never have been allowed to fall into a state of such disrepair for something like this to unfold. It is a disgrace. This is ultimately the result of long-running neglect and negligence which is slaughtering communities. This could not have happened at a worse time, as it is the school holidays, a time when families rely on the support we provide. Places like Postle Point are the heartbeat of their communities, and they have suffered under Glasgow Life's mismanagement for too long. We all pay our council tax, but we feel we don't get the same treatment as those living in other areas. Glasgow Life is investing as little as they can in places like this. The people in Glasgow's most deprived areas deserve better. Glasgow Life has offered Barmulloch Community Centre as an alternative, but Brian said it is too far away to meet their needs. He explained, "It is miles away, and many of the people who attend the centre don't have transport of their own. It's not as simple as asking a family member to get on a bus and make the journey to somewhere else." The charity boss says it is time for the council to begin a major overhaul of how community facilities are managed. He added, "Glasgow Life have proven time and time again they are not capable of running them. They have ruined decent facilities in many deprived areas, while the jewels in their portfolio receive proper investment so Glasgow looks good for visitors and tourists. It's not on. The most vulnerable people in our communities, children and adults, are suffering deprivation, poverty, fuel and food price increases, yet they cannot continue to attend a vital project to provide them with a nutritious meal, ironically a programme that the council itself has funded." Brian is calling on Glasgow Life to carry out the necessary works to get the centre back up and running. He added, "I understand people's safety can't be compromised, but we need action to get the centre open again." Moving things elsewhere isn't a solution that works for the people of Postle Park. A spokesperson for Glasgow Life said they are working to bring the centre back into operation. They said, "The unexpected failure of the boiler at Postle Point Community Centre on Tuesday left the building without heating or hot water, offering no option other than to close the building. We have worked with all let holders to offer alternatives to suitable facilities and will continue to engage with any organisation that wishes to find a new home. Glasgow Life is working with contractors to explore temporary works and the permanent replacement of the boilers to bring the building back into use as soon as possible. Working within the budget available to us, We deliver a carefully planned programme of repairs and maintenance across our estate, but even so, equipment can, and does, fail. And that report was an exclusive by Amanda Keenan, and it was read by me, Ian McKenna. From the Glasgow Times, Friday the 18th of October, from the news section. Acting teacher cleared of groping teen at school. This article is unattributed. An acting teacher has been cleared of groping a teenage pupil and sending explicit messages to other students. Gordon Brown, 53, was alleged to have committed the crimes at a school in Glasgow's northwest between August 2016 and 2018. Court papers stated Brown, of Stirling, was in a position of trust of the girls in his capacity as a teacher. It was claimed that former Still Game and Shetland actor Brown engaged in sexual activity with or towards 4 girls. The first charge stated that Brown repeatedly touched her on the leg and groped her breast. He was further accused of repeatedly making comments and sending messages to her of a sexual nature. A second charge claimed that Brown made comments of a sexual nature and touched the leg of another girl. A third allegation stated Brown made remarks about the appearance of a further girl. It was said he also repeatedly made comments and sent messages to her of a sexual nature. A final charge claimed that he repeatedly made comments to a fourth girl which were of a sexual nature. Brown denied the charges at Glasgow Sheriff Court and stood trial before a jury. However, Brown was acquitted after the Crown was unable to prove the ages of all but one of the alleged victims, which all required corroboration. Sheriff Shona Gilroy said, "Looking at the facts and submissions, there are 2 requirements: that the conduct took place and it was while the alleged victims were under 18. My view is that the Crown have failed to satisfy the necessary elements required about when they were 17 or under 18. And that report was unattributed." From the Glasgow Times, Friday the 18th of October, from the news section. Barrhead residents plead to enforce pavement parking ban. Report by Gillian McPherson. A frustrated resident has called on East Renfrewshire Council to begin enforcing a ban on pavement parking sooner rather than later and before somebody gets hurt. New legislation came into effect in December 2023, making parking on pavements, double parking, and parking at dropped curbs an offence, in order to improve accessibility and to ensure walking and wheeling is not obstructed by parked vehicles. Under the Transport Scotland Act 2019, councils now have the power to fine drivers for breaking these rules. In January, Edinburgh became the first local authority to enforce the ban on pavement parking, but while there are others who have followed suit, ERC has not yet set a date for enforcement to be introduced. A Barrhead resident, who asked not to be named and who helps an elderly relative in the town, told the Barrhead News, "I've had quite a few issues with this, so I was hoping it was going to be done sooner rather than later. It affects me on a personal level because I see firsthand why the legislation was brought in, to protect vulnerable road users like kids getting pushed in buggies and people in wheelchairs, so they're not getting put out in danger in the road. I just don't see why the council wouldn't want to implement that at the earliest possible opportunity. My concern is it going to be before someone gets hurt, knocked down or something before they start taking it seriously? I wouldn't like to think that they would look back in hindsight and think they could have done something when they had the opportunity and didn't." Neighbouring Glasgow City Council introduced enforcement last month, and Renfrewshire will enforce the new legislation from November. Guidance on ERC's website meanwhile states, "We're making plans to enforce the new legislation and will start enforcement at the earliest possible time. I feel they, ERC, are not looking out for vulnerable people who use the road that the legislation was brought in for," added the 54-year-old resident, whose concern is increasing as the darker nights draw in. "It could potentially save someone from serious injury or save a life. I just thought the council would have been a bit more proactive regarding it, and I just don't understand why. I just don't see why East Renfrewshire is different from other councils which are neighbouring." The guidance on the local authority's website, last updated in August, also explains that there are a number of processes that have to be undertaken before enforcement begins, including the need for a contractor to make changes to the handheld devices used by parking enforcement officers. We are part of a collaboration group which includes Glasgow City Council, North Lanarkshire and Dunbartonshire, who are all reliant on the same PCN system being updated. It adds, "We'll update this webpage with further details when the dates have been agreed." The guidance also states that the council is in the process of assessing all streets across East Renfrewshire in order to identify locations where vehicles are parking on the pavement and to determine if they meet the criteria allowing them to be considered for exemption. Councillor Andrew Morrison urged for a pragmatic approach to be taken within the new rules. He said, "East Renfrewshire Council already had several projects ongoing to look at road safety in a more holistic manner, targeted to known problematic areas, and this national directive is simply adding to the workload over and above what we wish to do locally. At present, there are instances of inconsiderate and dangerous parking taking place, which is not necessarily parking on pavements, and wardens are finding the workload difficult within their small team. Inconsiderate parking outside the new Neilston campus at drop-off and pick-up times is a particular issue raised with me often. I therefore ask that a pragmatic approach is taken with these new rules in order to balance access, pedestrian safety and residents' needs, along with the existing demands placed upon enforcement officers, because they need to be focused on where the trouble hotspots are. Once enforcement of the pavement parking ban begins, the Council will begin issuing penalty charge notices set by legislation at £100 and reduced to £50 as paid within 14 days. Asked about their plans to enforce the ban, on Friday an East Renfrewshire Council spokesperson reiterated, "We're making plans to enforce the new legislation. Once the necessary processes and procedures are in place, we'll start enforcement at the earliest possible time," they added. "We're in the process of assessing all streets across East Renfrewshire in order to identify locations where vehicles are parking on the pavement and to determine if they meet the criteria allowing them to be considered for exemption." In the article written by Gillian McPherson. From the Glasgow Times, Friday the 18th of October, from the news section, "Thief who broke into Glasgow restaurant and takeaway jailed." By court reporter Connor Gordon. A thief who broke into an Italian restaurant and Chinese takeaway was jailed today for 2 years. Liam Anderson, 27, first targeted a premises now occupied by Farina Pizza in Glasgow's Finnieston on December 29, 2023. Glasgow Sheriff Court heard that an employee noted the front door glass panel had been smashed with a red brick when opening up the restaurant. The cash register was also on the floor, which had traces of blood splatter on it. Police later attended and a forensic team took samples away for analysis. Meanwhile, it was discovered that £50 had been stolen. Prosecutor Gail Campbell said, "The swab result showed that it was 1 billion times more likely to be DNA of Anderson than anyone related to him." Efforts to trace Anderson were unsuccessful. The damage to the business was stated to be £250 as well as the £50 that was taken. The hearing was told that Anderson struck again at the premises occupied by Jing Fu Tang in the city's Byers Road in the West End. A neighbour heard banging outside and later spotted Anderson kicking the front door several times. Anderson entered for a short period and exited through a hole in the door he had created. Police were contacted and later traced Anderson nearby, who was found with gloves. An area search also recovered receipts from the Chinese restaurant, and a till was located in a bin close by. CCTV provided by the owner showed that the perpetrator was wearing reflexive patches on his trousers, which matched the pair Anderson had on. Anderson, who appeared from custody, pleaded to 2 charges of breaking into premises and stealing a quantity of money. Craig Dewar, defending, told the court his client's actions were opportunistic and to fund his drug habit. Sheriff John McCormick said, "The sums taken were not large, but there was damage done to the premises. You have a history of similar offending, including various custodial and non-custodial sentences, which have not stopped your offending." and that report was by Connor Gordon.
Evening Times, October 17. Opinion. Paul Sweeney says, Greater Glasgow needs a Metro Mayor. As the 17 members of the Council of the Nations and Regions met in Edinburgh last week for the first time, Britain's fifth largest conurbation, the Greater Glasgow City region, was conspicuous by its absence. As a fiercely proud Glaswegian, it was frustrating to see our great city denied its rightful place on such an important national body. But contrary to the posturing humbug from some quarters, I also realise that it was not a deliberate snub. It is merely because there is no obvious figurehead representing Greater Glasgow to invite. It has, however, served to highlight what many of us have recognised as a glaring gap in Scotland's governance for many years. Greater Glasgow, with a population of over 1.8 million people, needs a directly elected mayor with their own mandate to properly advance our region's interests. The devolution of power from Whitehall to 11 English city regions, such as Greater Manchester and West Yorkshire, over the last decade or so, has revived regional power south of the border, with strong figureheads like Andy Burnham and Tracy Brabin ensuring that their combined regional authorities have effective and strong representation on the national stage. These metro mayors have started to reverse the long-standing notion that Britain's cities outside of London are underperforming relative to their international peers. I think it is obvious to us all that Greater Glasgow has similar challenges which can only be properly addressed with a new regional level of coordination and government. Since it was established in 1999, the Scottish Parliament has been transformational for this country, but, as we know to be the case with Westminster, the location of the seat of power exerts an inevitable gravitational pull towards it. The accumulation of power at Holyrood has all too often come at Glasgow's expense, leaving us the most centralised country in Europe. Of course, the erosion of Glasgow's political impact and influence started 3 decades ago, when the Tories broke up the Strathclyde Regional Council into 12 smaller unitary councils in revenge for it holding a referendum during 1994, in which 1,194,667 people, 97%, rejected water privatisation. The breakup of Strathclyde, Britain's largest local authority, inflicted immense harm to Greater Glasgow. Strathclyde once developed the largest integrated public transport system outside London. It has since been dismantled, with SPT's executive planning powers taken by Transport Scotland. A new Metro Mayor would restore that agency and allow for critical decisions to be made closer to home. Labour has committed to begin this process if the party forms the next Scottish Government in 18 months' time. The faux indignation over the apparent snub of Glasgow and other Scottish cities from the meeting in Edinburgh last week failed to acknowledge that no council leader from any British city was present, and that the SNP has so far rejected calls to introduce elected regional mayors in Scotland, when it is well within their gift to do so. SNP figures have instead referred to the existing regional structures in Scotland, such as the Glasgow City Region Cabinet, as a reason why Metro Mayors are not needed in Scotland. The City Region Cabinet of 8 local authority leaders meets only a handful of times a year, and voters have no say on who ultimately leads it. It administers, it does not govern. Greater Glasgow needs a governing mayor and a strong voice advocating for us on the national and international stage. As we approach the 850th anniversary of Glasgow's Borough Charter, a fitting legacy would be to create a metro mayor to properly represent us among the nations and regions of Britain, says Paul Sweeney. Evening Times Sport, October 18. Opinion. Marissa McWhitter asks, is it time to be optimistic about Glasgow's future? Inside the urban planning offices of Glasgow City Council, since time immemorial, fluorescent lights buzz and flicker. It's too hot in winter, too cold in summer. Keyboards clack, computers hum, and Rip It Up by Orange Juice pulses through a built-in loudspeaker on repeat. Rip it up and start again. Rip it up and start again. Rip it up and start again, into eternity. I've never been inside the council's planning offices, but I'm confident this is what I would find inside, regardless of the decade. Scotland's largest city has been on the receiving end of some seriously poor urban planning decisions, including, notoriously, ploughing the M8 through its heart. I would argue it was the worst urban planning decision ever made. Communities across the city were ripped apart, people's sense of place completely wiped out. In financial terms, it was one of the most expensive infrastructure projects in Scotland at the time. The cost to the city's culture and cohesion was priceless. But this is not the only time the city has been let down by its local authority. The Squinty Bridge cost £20.3 million and was opened just shy of a year before a cable snapped and it was closed for 6 months. It was not a silver bullet for the city's congestion issues, and there are concerns its low height, 5.4 metres above the river, prevents the River Clyde from being a fully working river. But it looks nice on postcards and on the evening news. Another letdown was the Glasgow Airport rail link. It cost £30 million in land, compensation and other costs before it was scrapped. Spending on infrastructure generates long-term income and makes economic sense. Dipping your toe in, wasting millions, and then claiming you axed an infrastructure project for the good of the public purse is questionable at best. When the council announced they wanted to rearrange the furniture in George Square for the umpteenth time, I will admit I thought it was a colossal waste of money. Here we go again, I thought. We're set for another embarrassing repeat of 2013's antics, whereby the council spent around £90,000 on a George Square design contest involving architects from around the world, only to U-turn on the £15 million project at the 11th hour. Stephen Miles, a council member of the Glasgow Institute of Architects at the time, called it a shameful waste of time and money for the architectural profession. In the shadow of these urban planning missteps, I was sceptical when the diggers rolled into Sauchiehall Street and started chewing up the pavement, and they want to demolish Buchanan Galleries. It's barely 25. And St Enoch Centre, a mere millennial. Those planners are really letting Edwin Collins get inside their heads. And then something strange happened earlier this week. A timetable for the biggest transformation of Glasgow's public realm in half a century was laid out. I have followed the fractured progress of the Avenues project for years, but seeing the council's ambitious streetscape plans laid out in full felt like a breath of fresh air. And my shrivelled little Grinch heart grew 3 sizes that day. Funded through the City Deal and various other government streams, the programme involves transforming the look and feel of 21 areas with work on 11 avenues starting early next year. The project is aimed at making the city pleasant for people rather than in cars, which in turn should boost economic activity. Streets will also be equipped with better drainage, lighting, and lovely trees. We are calling it the most significant change since the 1970s pedestrianisation of Buchanan Street. It mostly encompasses the city centre, but extends to the East End, promising to better connect Duke Street to George Street. Works will be completed in phases and are expected to carry on through 2028. Some moan that years is too long to wait, but I will remind you that Rome was not built in a day. Glasgow City Council must get better and communicating at explaining these types of projects. The Herald and Evening Times revealed earlier this month that Buchanan Gallery's owner Landsec had ditched its £800 million plans to tear down the shopping centre. Though I doubt that saving carbon emission had much to do with it, it did show a little positive faith in the city centre's retail activity. St Enoch's Centre and Princess Square have had a string of welcomed businesses moving in. Things are looking up. The city's decline, its stagnation, its dereliction and decay have been dominating the news cycle for weeks, months even. I've written about it myself. But for all the times I've muttered about Glasgow not being able to have nice things, a little part of me thinks that surely this fatalistic attitude is not painting the full picture. Would I still be here after a decade if this city had not redeeming qualities? The Avenues project is not the most ambitious, but it is good enough, and that's okay, because at least it's progress. For the first time in months, I think this is something we can be optimistic about. It won't be perfect, but at least this is something positive. There is something to be said for a city that constantly tries to reinvent itself, even if it fails, especially amid the ever-present backdrop of multiple deprivation and crisis upon crisis. Housing, cost of living, drugs, homelessness, energy. It's still the funniest city in the world in my books, perhaps an enduring trauma response, but one that speaks to the stoic resolve of Glaswegians. This is our city. It's dark and dreary. It can at times look like someone let off a party popper full of cigarette butts and used gum on a Jackson Pollock of vomit. But it's also resilient, witty and warm. It's beautiful, challenging, and it gets under your skin. I feel we are on the precipice of something good, so let's just take the good when it comes. Let Glasgow flourish and all that. Marissa McWhirter is the editor of the Glasgow Rap.
Glasgow Times News on Monday the 21st of October. Almost 60,000 people in the city will lose their winter fuel payment this year. An article written by Stuart Patterson. Tens of thousands of pensioners in Glasgow will lose the winter fuel payment this year. Not long after winning the election, the Labour UK government announced that it was scrapping the payment for pensioners unless they get pension credit. In Scotland, the benefit is devolved, but the Scottish Government said the resulting cut in their budget of £160 million means it has no option but to follow the decision. Unless it's reversed in the budget this month, the cut will remove around £15 million from pensioners in Glasgow this winter. The Glasgow Times has analysed the official UK government statistics for the state pension and pension credit to uncover how many people will lose out. In the city, almost 60,000 of the most vulnerable people will lose the payment this winter. Campaigners and advocates for older people have branded the decision a scandal and urge Chancellor Rachel Reeves to reverse the decision in her budget this month. The records show that there are 80,531 people in Glasgow getting the state pension. There are 21,409 who receive pension credit, and they will still get the payment this year. It means that 59,122 pensioners will lose the assistance at a time when energy bills are set to increase, as the Ofgem cap was raised. The winter fuel payment is worth £200 for pensioners and £300 for those aged over 80. It means that somewhere between £11.8 million and £17.7 million will be taken away from the city's pensioners. Across the city, 73% of all pensioners will lose the payment. The cut-off for pension credit is just over £11,000. In many areas of Glasgow, there are pensioners with their own private or workplace pensions who are above the threshold. In more affluent areas like Kelvinside and Jordan Hill, this means of the 1,061 pensioners, only 66 will be eligible for the payment this year. In other, less affluent and some of the most deprived areas, there are still higher numbers of people who will lose out, either because they're not claiming the pension credit that they are due or are just above the threshold. The move has sparked anger and campaigners are demanding a rethink. Adam Strachura, Director of Policy at Age Scotland, said, "We've been campaigning to reinstate the winter fuel payment. It was taken away too quickly, without consideration of the impact. People have no time to plan what to do. There are a huge number just above the threshold who will lose out. At least half of all pensioners are reliant on the state pension for their income. The beauty of the winter fuel payment was that everyone who needed it got it." He said there was no consultation or discussion beforehand. Mr. Strachura added, "It's a scandalous disregard for people's health and their lives. There's been no proper analysis of its impact. It's just been taken away in a puff of smoke. There is no understanding of how important this amount of money is for so many people." More than 500,000 people have signed the Age UK petition to save the winter fuel payment for all pensioners. It states, cutting the winter fuel payment this winter with virtually no notice and no compensatory measures to protect poor and vulnerable pensioners is the wrong policy decision. An article written by Stuart Patterson. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 21st of October. Driver on the M73 was 4 times over the limit with his child on board. An article written by Morgan Carmichael. A man has been arrested after a car was spotted driving 4 times over the limit in Glasgow. Glasgow Road Police said that they had traced the vehicle driving on the M73 following a tip-off from a member of the public. Road Policing Scotland said on X, formerly known as Twitter, that the driver was allegedly over 4 times over the limit and was travelling with a young child on board. Police said it was utterly incomprehensible and revealed that a man has been arrested following the incident. They wrote, "Thanks to the member of the public calling us about this person driving on the M73. Glasgow Road Police traced the vehicle and found the reason why. The driver was over 4 times the limit. What's worse, they had their young child on board. Utterly incomprehensible. 1 male was arrested." An article written by Morgan Carmichael. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 21st of October. Football club faces a £5,000 bill after attack. An article issued by the Glasgow Times news desk. A football club has been raising money to help pay for repairs to their pitch after it was damaged by fireworks. Drumchapel United has set up a GoFundMe page to help them cover the almost £5,000 bill to repair the Donaldua Astro pitch that was damaged on October the 3rd. In a statement by the Drumchapel United girls team, the club said that the pitch was on fire at 8:45 p.m. and again at 12:15 p.m. the next afternoon in a devastating act of vandalism. In a post online, the club said, "This mindless act not only disrupts our club's activities, but also impacts the wider community, including local schools that rely on our facilities to host their tournaments." The club, based on Guscadden Road, has only recently opened 2 new terrace stands to boost their chance of being able to compete in the Scottish Cup. The West of Scotland League side unveiled the stands as the final step needed to acquire their SFA licence, which is what is preventing them from taking part in the tournament currently. Adam Hopes, Drumchapel co-manager, said, "It's massively affected the club. To say it's put a dampener on the mood of the place is an understatement. The message I would have for the people who've done it is to stay away from fireworks unless accompanied by an adult, as not only can they damage other people's property, they could also do harm to themselves. As a club, we've gone about all the right protocols in a situation like this, and all we can do is to hope that we never have a repeat of this again. The aim of the GoFundMe is to raise as much money towards it as possible. For a community club to be forking out in the region of £4,000 to £5,000 isn't something that is ideal, considering that the club has just forked out £5,000 to get our club licensed. The fundraising page has so far raised £2,230 out of their £4,000 target, and repairs to the pitch are currently underway. An article issued by the Glasgow Times news desk. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 21st of October. A huge fly-tipping site has been labelled a disgrace. An exclusive front-page article written by Amanda Keenan. A massive fly-tipping site on the south side of Glasgow has been labelled as one of the worst the city has ever seen. Dozens of fridges, freezers, sofas, beds, chairs and carpets have been dumped the entire length of a lay-by off McClellan Street in Kinning Park. Union bosses have condemned the culprits and say that their actions are putting strain on an already overstretched cleansing service that is struggling due to council cutbacks. Fears have also been expressed that the level of dumping could turn the area into a magnet for mice and rats. Chris Mitchell, the GMB convener, says that the site is an absolute disgrace. He added, "This is one of the worst examples of illegal dumping I've seen in over 20 years. There's rubbish of every description here: white goods, sofas, carpets and general waste. You name it, you'll find it somewhere in this lay-by. Not only are sites like this a complete embarrassment to the city, they're dangerous and unhygienic. This rubbish has accumulated to such an extent that it's spilling onto the road, making it hazardous to traffic. It'll also almost certainly attract vermin, and then we have a secondary issue to deal with." This is the second time that the lay-by has become an area of concern. Action had to be taken around 18 months ago to try and secure the area after dumpers began using it to leave bin bags and other household waste. Chris added, "The problem has returned and it's much worse this time round. Before, it was contained and environmental teams were able to deal with it, but this is dumping on an industrial scale now. Personally, I'd like to see much stiffer penalties for this type of thing. It needs to be viewed as a proper crime and dealt with as such. Cleansing has been hit hard by cuts to council budgets, and this type of thing only makes the job more difficult. Fly tipping is a growing problem across Glasgow, and this only highlights how much of an issue it's becoming. Our city is becoming a dumping ground." Council chiefs say that they are investigating who owns the land and will take the appropriate action after establishing the relevant facts. A spokesperson also said that the local authority's fixed penalty notice tariff for fly tipping has been increased from £200 to £500 in recent months. They added, "We've checked our records and there have been no complaints or reports of fly tipping on this private land. Our officers will visit the site to survey the condition of the land. Fly tipping is an environmental crime and those responsible are liable to face enforcement action. Where fly tipping is found on private land, it's the responsibility of the landowner to remove that waste and to ensure that their property is secure so future fly tipping can be prevented. Our environmental health team will also investigate these incidents on both public and private land and will take the appropriate action based on the available evidence. An exclusive front-page article written by Amanda Keenan. Glasgow Times on Monday the 21st of October. Lifestyle. Superstar Lionel Richie is coming to Glasgow's OVO Hydro. An article written by Morgan Carmichael. Superstar Lionel Richie is coming to Glasgow as part of his 2025 UK tour. It's been announced. The Dancing on the Ceiling star will be performing at the OVO Hydro in the city's West End on June the 4th, 2025. The Finnieston venue announced the news today, following a cryptic post on their social media accounts on Sunday. The Hydro posted on Facebook with the simple caption, "Hello Glasgow, tomorrow at 8 a.m. The post teased fans further as it was accompanied by a graphic with Lionel Richie lyrics. Officially announcing the news today, the venue wrote, "Get ready to party all night long. Lionel Richie will be singing all the hits at his upcoming show in the OVO Hydro on the 4th of June 2025. OVO Live pre-sale tickets will be available to purchase from 10 a.m. on Wednesday, October the 23rd, while general sale will go live at 10 a.m. on Friday, October the 25th. For more information or to buy tickets, visit www.ovohydro.com. An article written by Morgan Carmichael. Glasgow Times Politics on Monday the 21st of October. Former protégé will be banned from Alex Salmond's funeral, sources say. An article written by Rebecca McCurdy. It's been reported that Nicola Sturgeon will be banned from attending the funeral of Alex Salmond, according to sources close to the late First Minister. The funeral is expected to be held in the week beginning October the 28th, however an official date has yet to be set. Kenny McCaskill, acting leader of the Alba Party, has said that the Aberdeenshire service will be a private ceremony for family and close friends, with a wider public memorial expected later in the year. However, it's understood that Miss Sturgeon, a former mentee of Mr Salmond, has not a chance in hell of being invited to the funeral or any later celebrations of his life, according to sources close to the Alba Party. Mr Salmond died suddenly at the age of 69 after suffering a heart attack in the North Macedonian city of Ohrid, where he was attending a conference. A source close to the Alba Party, which was set up by Mr Salmond in 2021, told the Sunday Mail it will be a very small private service with only family attending. There will be a larger memorial celebration later in the year, or possibly into January, for Alex's supporters, friends and old colleagues. Nicola Sturgeon won't be invited to either of them. Not a chance in hell. While Miss Sturgeon was previously mentored by Mr Salmond and replaced him as SNP leader and First Minister after he resigned in the wake of the Scottish independence referendum defeat, the pair had a bitter and public falling out in recent years. Following his death, Miss Sturgeon described Mr Salmond as an incredibly significant figure in her life. The pair were once considered to be amongst the most formidable in UK politics, but had become increasingly critical of each other in the last few years. In her tribute to her former mentor, Miss Sturgeon admitted that she could not pretend that breakdown did not happen, despite being shocked and sorry to learn about Mr Salmond's death. She said, "It remains the fact that for many years Alex was an incredibly significant figure in my life. He was my mentor, and for more than a decade we formed one of the most successful partnerships in UK politics. Alex modernised the SNP and led us into government for the first time, becoming Scotland's fourth First Minister and paving the way for the 2014 referendum, which took Scotland to the brink of independence. He'll be remembered for all of that. My thoughts are with Moira, his wife, his wider family and his friends." Their friendship shattered publicly when Mr Salmond faced allegations of sexual misconduct dating back to his time in office. He strongly denied the claims and successfully took legal action against the Scottish Government for its handling of the investigation into him. Mr Salmond was awarded more than £500,000 as a result. He was charged with 14 offences, including 2 counts of attempted rape, but was acquitted of every charge in 2020. However, sources close to Miss Sturgeon told the Sunday Mail that the former First Minister was devastated by the death of Mr Salmond. A senior source is understood to have said, "It's been a lot for Nicola, and I think she doesn't know what to feel. She's completely devastated by Alex's death. Even though they had clearly fallen out of favour with one another, he was a huge part of her life for a long time. His death came as a complete shock to us all." The body of Mr Salmond was flown back to Scotland from North Macedonia on Friday, after businessman Sir Tom Hunter paid for a specially chartered flight. The coffin, draped in a saltire, was received by Mr Salmond's family and by Mr McCaskill. Discussing funeral plans, Mr McCaskill told the Press and Journal it will be the week of October the 28th, but the day has not yet been decided. It will be in the northeast, and it will be a private ceremony for family and close friends. There are some procedural issues because of the body coming back in a sudden death from a foreign jurisdiction, but all organisations involved have been outstanding, including Aberdeen Airport. Everybody who has been involved we have the highest regard for. An article written by Rebecca McCurdy. Glasgow Times on Monday the 21st of October. Opinion. An austerity budget won't deliver growth or social justice. A column written by Mike Daly. Chancellor Rachel Reeves' first Labour budget will be announced in the House of Commons on Wednesday, the 30th of October, just over a week away. What might it mean for you? If one reads the runes, the future doesn't look so bright. Let's start with the shenanigans with the Chancellor's black hole deficit in our public finances. At the end of July, we were told it was £22 billion. The black hole was trotted out robotically by Labour politicians to justify removing the winter fuel payment from over 10 million people of pensionable age in the UK. The Treasury's spending review claimed that the deficit was due to higher than expected public sector pay deals and unfunded policy decisions made by the Conservative government. Maybe, or maybe not, because much of the public sector pay deals in England are having to come from public funding cuts at national or local government level. In Scotland, we appear to have blown the £700 million raised from the leasing of Scotland's seabed for offshore wind to prop up next year's revenue budget. That's a recipe for disaster, as how do you plug future shortfalls? In my opinion, we undersold the offshore wind lease and got stung. Why we didn't hold out for a better capital sum and a recurring percentage share of future gross revenue, I don't know. But back to the Chancellor and the black hole in our finances. Last week, she tells us it's now £40 billion. We're told that this is the money needed to protect key government departments from real terms spending cuts, to cover the impact of the £22 billion overspend from the last government, and to build a fiscal buffer for the rest of the Parliament. And if you believe that, I have a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you. The black hole baloney can be presented in a variety of ways and can be used to justify whatever you like. For me, the social contract between elected politicians and voters is at risk of breaking. Sir Keir Starmer was elected on less votes than Jeremy Corbyn secured in the 2017 and 2019 general elections. We've had very low turnouts at recent elections because people have lost trust in political parties. Before the general election, Labour promised not to increase taxes on working people and said it wouldn't raise value-added tax, corporation tax, income tax or national insurance. Many people are now speculating that the Chancellor could put up national insurance payments for employers, which would be an obvious breach of Labour's manifesto commitment. And cuts to the winter fuel payment weren't in the manifesto either. Other predictions include raising revenue through capital gains and inheritance tax, including taxing defined contribution pension pots on death, reducing pension tax relief and increasing fuel tax. It's likely that the Chancellor will continue with the freeze on the income tax personal allowance, upon which no tax is paid, which is a tax hike in real terms when you consider the impact of inflation year on year. Income tax, but not the personal allowance, is devolved to the Scottish Parliament, and the Scottish Government will announce its budget in December in relation to the income tax starter, basic, intermediate and higher rates. It's very difficult to see how the UK Government can achieve any meaningful economic growth with a Tory-style austerity budget. A column written by Mike Daly.
From the Glasgow Times on Tuesday, the 22nd of October 2024, from the news section. Man arrested following death at Burnbank Centre in Hamilton. And this article was written by Morgan Carmichael. A man has been arrested following the death of a 36-year-old man and the alleged attempted murder of a 59-year-old man. The Glasgow Times previously reported that emergency services raced to Burnbank Centre in Hamilton at around 3:50 p.m. yesterday following reports of two men injured within the premises. Upon arrival, cops said the 36-year-old man was pronounced dead at the scene and the 59-year-old man was taken by ambulance to hospital. Now the force have confirmed that a murder inquiry has been launched following the alleged incident and a 56-year-old man has been arrested. Officers remain in the area and some closures are in place on Whitehill Road and Purdy Street. The closures are likely to last until after midday today with limited access to shops. Members of the public are asked to avoid the area. Superintendent Richard Taylor, Motherwell Police Station, said, "We believe this was an isolated incident and there is no danger to the public. We have an increased police presence in the area as we understand this could be a very upsetting and worrying time for the local community. Anyone with concerns is asked to speak to these officers." And that article was written by Morgan Carmichael. From the Glasgow Times on Tuesday, the 22nd of October 2024, from the news section. Unison say Police Scotland staff to be balloted on pay offer, and this article was written by Morgan Carmichael. Police staff across Scotland are to be balloted on a pay offer with a recommendation to reject it, a union has announced. Unison said the Scottish Police Authority's offer of a 4.75% rise on pay and allowances falls short of this year's pay claim. Unison Scotland Police Staff Branch Secretary David Malcolm said, "Police staff play a vital role in keeping communities safe across the country. The justice system simply couldn't function without the essential work of employees in control rooms, forensic laboratories and custody suites. When Police Scotland was established a decade ago, there were promises that savings would be pumped back into the service, but all that's happened since then is a reduction in police numbers and cuts in police staff pay. At the same time, spending on consultancy firms such as Price Waterhouse Cooper and Deloitte has gone through the roof. Police staff belonging to Unison are recommended to reject this offer and show they're prepared to take industrial action to bring the SPA back to the table with an improved offer. A ballot will run from today until November the 1st. A spokesperson for the SPA said the 4.75% offer to police staff members covers those earning £28,296 and above. Police staff members earning up to £28,296 are offered a £1,344 uplift. The two lowest pay points would be removed from April the 1st, 2024, meaning the lowest salary point would be £26,031, equating to an hourly rate of £14.26. The 4.75% uplift offer also applies to a range of allowances for officers and staff, while on-call allowances would increase to £32 from April the 1st, 2024, with a further increase to £35 from January the 1st, 2025. The offer continues Policing in Scotland's commitment to no compulsory redundancies. The offers are above inflation and higher than any pay increase agreed within the Scottish public sector, excluding the NHS. And that article was written by Morgan Carmichael. From the Glasgow Times on Tuesday, the 22nd of October 2024. From the news section. Urgent appeal to find women missing from Glasgow South Side. And this article was written by Morgan Carmichael. Police have launched an urgent appeal to trace a woman who has gone missing from Glasgow. Shona Biggins, 49, was last seen in the Greenacres Drive area of the city around 3 a.m. on Monday, October the 21st. She is described as around 5 feet and 2 inches tall with long fair hair. She wears glasses and is likely to be wearing a black puffer-style jacket and leggings. Extensive inquiries are being carried out in the Darnley, Pollock and Nitshill areas to try and trace her, and officers are asking for information from the public. Sergeant Stefan Bain said, "We are very concerned for Shona's welfare and are trying to trace her as quickly as possible to ensure she is safe and well. If anyone thinks they've seen her or someone matching her description since the early hours of this morning, please get in touch with us. Shona, if you see this appeal, please contact police so we can make sure you're okay. Anyone with information should contact Police Scotland on 101, quoting reference 0741 of October the 21st. And that article was by Morgan Carmichael. Recorded by me, Caroline.
From Glasgow Times, Tuesday the 22nd of October. In the lifestyle section, British group Sugababes announce gig at Glasgow OVO Hydro. This article was written by Morgan Carmichael. A huge British pop group are coming to Glasgow's OVO Hydro next year. Sugababes, known for tunes like Push the Button and About You Now, will be performing at West End Avenue on April 17th, 2025. The OVO Hydro announced the news today on Facebook, writing, "Girl band royalty Sugababes are gracing Glasgow with their presence at the OVO Hydro on April 17th, 2025. It comes after the band graced the Transmit stage earlier this year. Tickets for the show will go on sale at 10 a.m. on Friday, October 25th. OVO Live pre-sale tickets will be available from 10 a.m. on October 23rd. And that article was written by Morgan Carmichael. From Glasgow Times, Tuesday the 22nd of October. In the lifestyle section, Twin Atlantic to receive special honour at Barrowland Ballroom. This article was written by Sandhya Suresh. A Glasgow alt-rock band have received the Disruptor Award winners at the 2024 Specsavers Scottish Music Awards. Twin Atlantic, along with other winners, were announced just over a week before the sold-out ceremony at Barrowland Ballroom. The band's recognition comes after the release of their 7th studio album, Meltdown, and on the brink of their November UK tour. Sam McTrusty said, "It's truly an honour to be recognised by Nordoff and Robbins for their Scottish Music Awards. The work they do with music therapy is so inspiring to us as musicians, and so necessary for so many families out there who rely on the experiences they provide. For our band to be called a disruptor within the industry feels great. We've always tried to push ourselves creatively, touring, and now even how we release our music. So of course, it's very humbling to have people from our homeland make some noise about it, and the longer we are a band, the more we just keep being drawn towards the disruption of the rules. Hopefully can be disrupting for many years to come." The Specsavers Scottish Music Awards, now in its 26th year, is a flagship fundraiser for Nordoff and Robbins, a UK-based music therapy charity. The event, which will have performances from some of Scotland's most celebrated musicians, will take place on November 2nd. Other winners include Berkeley 2 Studios, Callum Bowie, Country 2 Country, Harry and Dominic, Kyle Falconer, Lulu, Phil Bowdry, Soup Dragons, and Travis. Phil Bowdry, president of touring at Live Nation Europe, who was honoured with OVO Hydro's Promoter Award, said, "I am extremely honoured to be recipient of this year's OVO Hydro Promoter Award. Due to our long-standing relationship, Glasgow and the OVO Hydro hold a very dear place in my heart. I'd like to thank them and Nordoff and Robbins for this incredible recognition. Nordoff and Robbins' dedication and passion make this a very special organisation, with music at its heart. The transformative work they do truly helps enrich many lives." And that article was written by Sankhya Suresh.
This is from the Glasgow Times on the 23rd of October 2024 from the news section, and the headline reads, "CCTV images released after assault in Glasgow city centre." This article is by Morgan Carmichael. Cops have released CCTV following an assault in a Glasgow lane. The force has put out an image of a man who they believe may be able to assist with the inquiries into the attack. The incident took place in Princes Court Lane on Thursday, December 7th, 2023. Police are now asking for anyone with information to come forward. If you feel you can help, call police on 101, including incident number 0261 of December 7th, 2023, or call Crime Stoppers on 0800 555 111. This article was by Morgan Carmichael. This is in the Glasgow Times on the 23rd of October 2024 from the news section, and the headline reads, "Dates revealed for Glasgow Winterfest 2024 in City Centre." This article was by Morgan Carmichael. The dates for this year's Glasgow Winterfest have finally been revealed. The festive celebrations will be heading to George Square and St Enoch Square from November until January 2025. Glasgow Winterfest at George Square will be open from Saturday, November 23rd, until Sunday, January 5th. Meanwhile, Glasgow Winterfest at St Enoch Square will run from Saturday, November 9th, until Sunday, December 29th. Glasgow World reports that George Square will feature attractions such as the Carousel, Helter Skelter, Santa's Train, the Big Wheel, and the famous ice rink. While St Enoch Square will feature the likes of the Starflyer, Santa's Runaway Train, Grinch Train, and Kids Carousel. Food will include salt and chilli dishes, Yorkshire pudding wraps, and churros. Entry is free at both locations, while rides at St Enoch Square will operate on a token system. Applications are also open for those who wish to exhibit at Glasgow Winterfest 2024. For more information and updates, visit glasgowwinterfest.com. This article is by Morgan Carmichael. This is from the Glasgow Times on the 23rd of October 2024 from the news section, and the headline reads, "Man due in court following assault on Glasgow High Street." This article is by Morgan Carmichael. A man is due in court following an alleged assault in Glasgow city centre. A 40-year-old man was apparently assaulted on High Street around 6:15 p.m. on Wednesday, September 18th. He received treatment for his injuries as a result of the incident. Now, a 34-year-old man has been arrested and charged in connection with the assault. He has been released on an undertaking to appear at Glasgow Sheriff Court on Thursday, January 16th, 2025. A report will be sent to the Procurator Fiscal. This article is by Morgan Carmichael. This is from the Glasgow Times on the 23rd of October 2024 from the news section, and the headline reads, "Thousands of Scots set to earn more as new real living wage announced." This article was by Alistair Ferguson. Tens of thousands of Scots are set to receive a cost of living pay boost as the real living wage is set to increase. The real living wage differs from the government's minimum wage rate, often called the national living wage, and is a higher voluntary rate that is independently calculated based solely on the actual cost of living. More than 68,000 people in Scotland working for over 3,750 real living wage employers will see their hourly rate rise to £12.60 an hour, meaning they will earn £2,262 more per year than the national living wage. Research by the Living Wage Foundation showed that despite inflation easing, many of those working in Britain's 3.7 million low-paid jobs are still struggling with the impact of years of rising prices causing a cost of living crisis. The research showed 42% of low-paid workers have less than £10 left each week after covering essential expenses, while 39% have used a food bank in the past year, and 28% use one at least once a month. Deputy First Minister Kate Forbes said the Scottish Government has welcomed the announcement and that it has championed the real living wage for almost a decade. She said, "After record high living costs over the past 2 years, this will be a welcome boost for thousands of workers across Scotland. The Scottish Government has championed the real living wage since 2015, and we have made it a legal requirement for all organisations receiving grant funding from a public body to pay the real living wage. This has enabled Scotland to have the highest proportion of workers being paid the real living wage or higher in the UK. The real living wage applies to all workers over the age of 18 working for an employer who pays the rate and is now £12.60 an hour. In comparison, the national living wage applies to those over the age of 21 and is £11.44 an hour. Despite the struggling economy, a record number of employers have signed up to pay the real living wage in the last 3 years, the campaign group said. This includes extending the rate to third-party contractors like cleaners and security guards, with 1 in 9 employees in the UK now working for an accredited living wage employer, the group added. Some household names who have committed to paying their employees a real living wage include First Bus, SSE, Aviva, IKEA, Burberry and Lush. Peter Kelly, Poverty Alliance CEO, has called on more employers to commit to paying their workers a living wage. He said, "We all need an income that is enough to cover our needs and protect us from poverty, but too many workers in Scotland are struggling to stay afloat. A just Scotland would see every worker's wage meet their everyday needs, and employers can play their part by paying the real living wage, which is the only wage rate in the UK based solely on living costs. We commend the leadership of more than 3,750 accredited living wage employers in Scotland that have taken a stand to ensure workers can earn a wage that covers their needs, even when times are tough for many businesses. We call on many more employers to pay the real living wage and become accredited. More than 50 UK employers who want to ensure their workers never face poverty in retirement are signed up to the Living Wage Foundation's Living Pension Accreditation, 12 of which are based in Scotland. The Living Pension Employers provides a living pension savings level using either a cash target of £2,800 or the percentage of 12%, with a minimum of 7% or £1,630, contribution coming from the employer. This article is by Alistair Ferguson.
That concludes this week's edition of the Glasgow Times podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels at Q and Review and to tell your friends about our service.